Hi, I'm Tony with Advantage Lifts. Today we're here to put together our side-by-side 10,000 pound 2-car lift. And so I've got them sitting here in the garage already in 2 crates that you can see right here. If you want to see how we get them off of the trailer, refer back to our video on the SS9000. It shows in detail how to get them off the trailer and into your garage. Some things that you'd want to make sure you have is all the tools that you'll need for the installation. And then another very handy item is what we call a material handling lift that you can rent at any rental store. It's a hand crank forklift, and it's got a 600-pound capacity on it. Makes it very handy to put these lifts together. Otherwise, they are very heavy to do. So first thing we're going to do is unwrap the lift. You can see as we unwrap this, we got lots of plastic, lots of cardboard, bubble wrap. It's all to make sure that it gets to your house with very few scratches on it. Okay, now that we have the plastic wrap off of the lift, you can see what's inside of it. We have a set of 8 drip trays that I've already put off to the side. We have a set of 48-inch aluminum approach ramps. You have your post, your caster kit, and 2 jacking trays that are included with this set. So we're going to unload all of this and start setting the lift up. First thing we're going to do is unbolt the legs that are bolted to our frames, and you'll just take them off with using number 19 deep socket and enclosed wrench. And then with a little help, because these are very heavy, pick them up out of the crate. Ready? Now I'm unloading our top caps, putting them all over here in one area so we have everything in one spot. Then you have a set of casters that we're going to unload as well. Okay, once you get the legs out of the crate and they're stood up, there is a right and a left leg. So you want to make sure you have the locks facing the outside of the lift. So if I'm looking at this from this direction, the locks cutouts are on the right-hand side. If I look at this one over here, the locks are cut on the left-hand side. So I have a right-hand post and a left-hand post, front and back the same way. And that's where you'll set it up with your tracks in the middle. And now we're going to proceed to put the cross arms on top of these posts to get them set up on the 7th lock from the bottom. Okay, now that we've got our first crate completely unwrapped, the posts set up in the direction we want them to, just on the outside of the lift, we're going to go to the next crate, which is our 2 cross arms, our power track that has a cylinder in it. It also has the bolt kit, all the parts box inside there, and the linkage rods are inside this track. So we're going to unbolt that, get it ready to go, and then put our cross arms on to form an H with our post and cross arms. So we're going to start the unwrapping process on this. You'll need to find the middle of the cross arm, and you'll want a strap. These cross arms are about 600 pounds, so you'll want a good heavy strap. This is a 1,200 pound capacity strap, because you're going to wrap it around this, and then we're going to pick this off using our Genie to take them off of the crate. You want to make sure you're in the middle of the cross arm so that it picks it up level. Okay, and then you'll need an assistant. I'm going to have Gordy just kind of guide this for me so that it keeps it all nice and straight. All right, wait. And then all we're going to do is set it down on a set of blocks over here. The reason we're setting them down on these blocks is so that we can undo our band, our strap around it, and put it on the forks. Now we're going to unwrap the plastic from it, just like we did on the others. Now once we get it all unwrapped, and you can see we use lots of bubble wrap, once again, to keep this product looking good for you. We had it set on the blocks. That enabled us to put our Genie underneath of it right in the middle with the forks, and now we're able to pick this up. Now you'll notice we have the locks on the outside going to match the lock holes on the outside of this lift. So when we raise this, I'm going to show you two different ways of doing this. One, by using the Genie, where we'll raise this cross arm up over the top and lower it down onto the post. And then the other side, we'll show you doing it without using the Genie. So you got two different options to do. When we're getting ready to stand this up to go down our post, we have to open up these locks. These locks would be in the way if I'm trying to go down the post. So what you're going to do is open the lock up with your finger, pull it back, stick a piece of cardboard in here that will hold the lock open, just like so. And then up here on the top, on our ALI certified lift, with the secondary lock, you're going to take a piece of duct tape, wrap around this handle, pull it, and then just come down and tape it to the bottom of this bucket, just so it holds this secondary lock open. So now you can see that there's no locks protruding out. It'll slide down that post. Okay, now that we've got our cross beams off of the second package and we've positioned them by the post, we've got them elevated up on blocks or 2x4s so that we're able to get our material handling lift underneath of them. Now we got to get to the parts box that's in between these two sets of tracks. And so we're going to unwrap this one, get the parts box off, because we want to get the sliders to insert into our buckets that I'm going to show you in just a few minutes. Now we're ready to open up our parts box, and inside the parts box you're going to find your manual, and you're going to find the sliders that we need to be able to insert our cross rails over the posts themselves. So we're going to get those out, so we're ready to get that going at this time. What it'll take is 3 angle sliders and 1 cutout per side of the, so there'll be 4 sets of 3 and 1. Now that we've got our Genie picking up right in the middle of this cross arm, it's important that you're in the middle. We're going to raise this up, and once I get it to the height of this crossbeam, then I'm going to move my legs underneath of the crossbeam instead of trying to move the Genie. I'll actually lock the wheels and have them locked at this point so that it doesn't move anymore. And so I'm going to raise this up. Now once you get it up, try to stay out from underneath of your cross arm as you're working. Come over here and position your leg right underneath the post. And this is where you'll need an assistant to help you so that as you're going down, you're lined up. Okay, now we're going to lower it a little bit till we get closer and line up one of the holes. Looks like yours first, Gordy. You're there. Okay, and I'm going to come over here and move mine just a little bit. Gordy, will you let me down just a little bit? Right, okay. Okay. Now we're coming down, and by using the Genie, it keeps it nice and level, so it comes down without scratching up your post. And you can kind of guide it here to make sure your post is in the middle of the bucket as it comes down. Just like so. And we're going to go down till we get to the 7th lock. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's where we're going to set it. Okay. Keep coming. I'll get this. Yeah, keep coming. We'll get it. We've pulled out our cardboard so that the locks will engage into the post. Now we'll keep this Genie underneath here until we get the sliders in there so that everything stays nice and square till we get our slider blocks in. So now we're going to insert our sliders, and these are what's going to keep our outside bucket from rubbing on our post. And so they're going to go into each corner, and you'll see I've got one that's notched out. This one is for the double locks. So the way it's going to go in here is it'll go in where the lock is, and it goes in between the post and down, and then you set your double lock. So you have to open this lock up, insert it into place, and then release your second lock for it to go onto. And then I always start from the opposite end. Just push your post over till you can get that to insert in. Put them in all the other corners. And that gives you the right spacing now that the lift is setting on the lock on the post to where I can remove my cherry picker over here so that we can have the weight down. Okay, now that we have it setting, we have an H formed with our two posts and our crossbeam. And I want you to notice how this crossbeam is made, that we have an arch right here in the middle of it. We got about a little over an inch arch formed in this, and the reason for that is when you're going to have deflection over 16-foot span. So what we do is we crown this crossbeam in the way we make it so that when we put the 10,000 pounds, the two cars on here, it's going to level out nice and level. We won't have any sags in our lifts. Very important. Okay, so once again, we got to prop this lock open so we're able to insert the post into the collar. So we're going to just tilt this back, insert one of the sliders in here just so it holds that lock open, and then you can see there's no lock touching on the inside, so we can insert our post in. And like we did the other side, we'll take a piece of tape and tape open that secondary lock so that it's out of the way as well. Now, if you choose not to rent a material handling lift and you're doing this with an engine hoist or a cherry picker, then you're going to have to do the cross arm this direction, meaning you're laying it down on a set of blocks, and then you're going to pick up the post and insert them in to that point. I want to make note, material handling lift is a much better way to go. A lot more secure and a lot less lifting for you. All right, so with the assistance of a helper, we're going to insert this in. And the thing about this, you got to go real careful because when you're sliding metal on metal, you can scratch these posts up. So we got to keep it level and insert it into its spot. Okay. Now what we're doing, my assistant's putting in 2 more of them sliders so that when we slide this in, it doesn't scratch the post up. And you only need 2 of them, 1 in each diagonal corner. Okay, now at this point we can pull out our stops for our locks so that when we stand this up, that goes all the way to the ground. All right, now that we've got this to where we've got our post in, I put my Genie back underneath there, or you use the cherry picker and have a strap around it at this point because you have to raise it up to pull those blocks that we had it setting on out of the way. So now at this point, 2 guys are going to get on the end of the post, and we're just going to walk this up to where it stands up on the base plates. Bend down, use your legs. 1, 2, and 3, up we go. Just like so. And then, just like we did on the other one, we're going to raise this up to the 7th lock. So now that our Genie's underneath there, we can just pick it up. All right, now we're at the point where we have the cross arms on, the 4 posts. We have the track, or we're going to start with our power track, the one with the cylinder in it. We're going to have our power unit positioned on the front left corner So I've got the port coming out of that cylinder at that post. And so we're going to start with that post, raise it up, set it on the track, and then start putting the other 3 tracks on as we go out. There. You have some 3/4 inch bolts and a ramp clip, and we're going to put these in loosely. You'll use your 3/4 inch bolt with the flat washer on the bottom. Insert them into your ramp clip, just like so. And then it'll go in here. And then you gotta line up your holes. Just like so. Now on the side that's gonna have the ramp, where you're gonna put in the approach ramps, you wanna put 1 washer just to give you a little more spacing between the cross arm and the ramp clip so that the ramp can insert in there without touching. That'll only be on the side of the ramps. Okay, and I'm just putting on the ramp clip just like we did the other side. This side I am not going to be driving on, that side will be driving on, so I don't need the space between the ramp clip and the cross arm. So it'll just be the bolt, the flat washer, the lock nut, and the lock washer and lock nut. Now at this time, it's easy to get the cable that's underneath this power cylinder out at this time. So I'm going to cut the straps that are underneath here holding all the cables together and pull it out on its appropriate place here, and I'll show you that real quick. Okay, so we're going to just cut these, and your cables are going to kind of fall out to the place where they need to be. And then, right now, this one is the one that's going to come out of this hole and come up the pulley and go out. But before we put our rod in, it's much easier to get this out at this time. So I go ahead and pull these out. Take the nuts off. Okay, packed inside of the second crate, in between the tracks are your 2 long lock rods. You also had your power unit mount, and then the locking rods for the handle and T-bars are also included in that package. So just lay those aside for now. Okay, as you see, we was able to turn that track over, and now we have the slider rail for our jack trays on the inside to match this. So that was the bottom, it's turned up. Right now, we're going to pick this one up and insert it onto our cross rails. What we're going to do is take the end crates off, just like we did on the others, move them out of the way. Okay. Yep. Okay, now that we've got our package crates off, we're able to lift it up, set it onto the cross rail. An easy way to do that is just turn this sideways to where you can go clear up. And the same things we did a minute ago, put on our ramp clips, bolt, flat washer, into the set of holes. As you push on it, move your track and it'll line right up to your holes. Lock washer, lock, and then nut. Now I went ahead and installed the other 2 tracks just like we did the first 2 tracks on the cross rail. So now we have all 4 tracks onto the cross rails. The bolts are just put into them just loosely, and now we're ready to go across and tighten them up. But before you tighten them, one thing you want to do is you want to make sure the tracks are completely to the outside. So you'll come to the edge and give it a yank and make sure the track is to the outer edge of the bolt, all the way around and even on the inside to make it. Because if you put an aluminum deck insert in between, that gives you room for them to set down inside there. So I'll do that at this time. Okay, now we're ready to take and tighten these up. 1 1/16 socket on an impact and a wrench, and you'll want to tighten them all down good and tight. When I go to tighten these, I want to start on the 2 middle tracks. I'm going to tighten these up on these 2 tracks, go down there, tighten those 2 up, and then work my way to the outside. Now once I get the inside ones done, now I can work my way on the outside and tighten those up as well. Okay, now we've got them all tightened up. The ramp should be good and secure. Everything is solid at this point. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to route our cables and put our top caps on. First thing we'll do is do the top caps. There's a right and a left on the top cap, and I'm going to show that to you. You'll notice one of the top caps have 4 holes drilled on the top. That is for our motor bracket. We have 4 holes. On the motor bracket, there's 2. So we give you 2 different options on which side to hang that bracket from. So this is going to be positioned where the motor is going to be, which is on this post down here, because we have our port for our hydraulic coming out here, and our power unit's going to hang right here. So it's got to be, this has got to be where the port is on the track. Very important when you set this up that that one goes to that direction. Okay, now we're going to route the cables through. I've taken the nuts off, and I'm going to position it up through the track here so that I can feed it through the rest of the tracks. Okay, now we're going to crawl up onto the lift, make this a little easier. Now, there's a right and a left to these top caps. You want to insert these, there's 2 sides to it. You can see here I have a straight cut. On the other side, it's a 2-part cut. The straight cut is going to be on the inside, so when this inserts in, I have the straight cut on the inside of the lift. That's how you know you're in the right position. And then this hole will be directly straight in line with your cable coming up. So now you'll take your cable, run it on the back side of your secondary lock. Put a washer. And both nuts go on top. Just gives you more strength on your pull. When this is all the pull is coming from this area and you're doing a double nut instead of just a single. Walk around to each one and do that, the same thing. So you want to thread it right up through the top, put your flat washer on, and then both your nuts. And as you see, to start with, all I'm doing is getting it to flush. The second nut is flush with the top of the cable. So that and I'll adjust them when we get it all up and running to get it leveled off. But to start with, just make them all flush. And one more to go. And this is the one that has the 4 holes on it, because we're going to have our mounting bracket attached to it. Okay, That gets us our cables all attached. We're on the back side of our slack cable lock of that pull, so when it gets tension on it, pulls it out. Okay, the next part we're going to do, we're going to put on our keepers that keep our sliders in place, so when the lift goes down, the sliders don't come out. So we've inserted them in. Now we've got a little Phillips head screw with a washer, and then our keeper, and it goes right onto the outside here. Tighten that up. And now you see it got a ledge to where the sliders cannot slide out when the lift is going down. You'll do that on all 4 posts on both sides, 2 per post. All right, on this inside one, we're going to do the same bracket, same little washer and screw, but on this one we have a hose going in here. So, because this is the one that we have our hose connecting to the port, and this keeps everything out of the way. So we'll put the hose in that little keeper, put it on there, tighten it down, and that's just a little conduit keeper that holds that hose in place. So now as it goes up and down, it stays out of the way and doesn't get pinched on the outside of your lift. All right, now we're going to take this port. We don't connect that in shipping, so because if it was sticking out of this hole, sure enough, it would get hit and broke off. So it's just attached inside, and it's double nutted. So you take one of the nuts off, stick it up through the hole, and put the other nut on the outside of it, and tighten her down. And then you're able to attach your hose, is just right here. Go ahead and snug it down. And now your hydraulics are done. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to do our lock rods and attach to our locks with all the heims. First thing you'll want to do is you get 8 of these little heim end joints, and you have 2 rods with jam nuts on the back side. Go ahead and put these on both ends to get them started. And they'll go at both opposite ends here. It doesn't matter the adjustment at this point. All we're doing is just getting them on there. Okay, now we're going to insert this long lock rod into these eyelets. I had to remove the jam nut off the end of it so that could happen. Put that back on. And then we're going to insert the heim ends on the end of it. Now you're going to take the heim end and just attach it to the end. Once again, just screw it on a couple turns to start with. Then you're going to use the hex head bolt with a lock. There's a lock washer in there. Put the bolt in first. The lock washer works as a spacer between the lock and the heim so that it can rotate. And then just go ahead and tighten that up. And then see, with that washer in there, this allows this to swivel nicely. And then we'll do this to the other end as well. On this one, we have our short lock rod with our 2 heims. We're going to insert the bolt, the lock washer, and then into the lock itself. Okay, now we are ready to put on the final heim on this side. Once again, it doesn't matter right now where we're just putting it on. And then you have a long lock rod. It's a T-bar with a spacer. And then you have on the end, you have a coupler and a jam nut. We're going to take the coupler and jam nut off at this point. And what we're going to do now is insert this into this hole. And then under the lift, there's a tube that you're going to insert this rod into. So you want to make sure when you push this in, look underneath to make sure that inserts into the tube. The spacer keeps it the distance away that we need. And then now you're ready to put your heim ends to your lock. So here's where you're going to do your adjusting. You want this T-handle to be just past 12 o'clock, just barely past 12 o'clock. So I'm going to adjust this to where these are going to be lined up, so that's just past 12 o'clock. And I put the bolt, a flat washer through the hole, and then a flat washer and a nut. And then the same with this one, adjust it out so that it reaches the same position. Bolt, washer, through, washer, then nut. So when done, you got your long rod on the top, your short rod is on the bottom. You've got this setting just past 12 o'clock. So when this opens this direction, it pulls the locks open on both ends. So when you turn that handle at the other end, when we get it connected, it will rotate this way, opening both locks at the same time. Now what we're going to do is just tighten these down. Now you'll want to tighten these up here, jam that up to it, to where these are tight at this point. And then go down to the other end and do the same for it, so you want to jam it tight. Now that we got this side, we've went ahead and put it in. I'm ready to insert. On this one, you have the handle, you have the spacer, and you had your two connectors and a nut. We're going to put this through the hole just like we did the other side. And down underneath, there's a tube. Once again, it's got to line up with that tube. At this point, you'll want to take off your bolts and nuts here. Now before we can hook our heims up to this, we need to connect this two rods. We got this little short rod and we had that little short rod. So now what we've got to do is connect it underneath with this long rod. And this will make that a solid rod all the way through. All right, so now what we're going to do is take this connecting rod and join the two rods together. So I'm going to slide it in here, and about halfway, there's one of those tubes. And you're going to insert it into the tube. You have to find it. Coupler. And then the rod. All we got to do is just get it started, because I'll tighten it up here in a minute. Now we'll do the same with this one. We're going to put on the jam nut first. Back it up there a ways. Put on the collar, coupler. Jam nut and join them together. Like I said, we just got to get it started. And then we'll go up top and tighten it up. You'll see we have a lot of space in this rod. And so we're going to tighten that up by just tightening it up. With me already having the lock rods hooked to the heims on the other end, they're not turning, so I'm able just to turn this in, and it makes it real easy, and I don't have to fight that underneath the track. You just go to where you have just a little slack, right there where you can just feel a little back and forth, and that's your distance you want to have. Now on this side, the other one we had just past 12. This one we're going to set just before 12, just a little bit before 12 on our handle for the T-bar. So we'll have to adjust our locks and everything to fit that. Okay, so now we're ready to put this T-bar just a little before 12 o'clock. So it's going to not quite be straight up, but just a little back. So adjust your rods so that that will be exactly at that point. Once again, it's the bolt, a flat washer, through the T-handle, a flat washer and a nut. And then we have our other short lock rod, bolt, lock nut, attached to the lock. Okay, so now we're going to tighten this one right back up. to where it's good and snug, and then adjust this one so that it fits that length as well. And once again, we're going to go bolt, flat washer, nut. Okay, now we're going to tighten up our jam nuts here again. Jam them up to the heim. So then our rod is solid. Just like so. Now our rod is done. Now what we're going to do is go back underneath and connect that long rod with the two couplers. We're going to connect that to where it gets solid. So when I open up from this end, it opens up the other end as well. Makes it one solid rod. Now, when you get going with this, you want to start the furthest away from the handle so that the nut that comes up to the coupler, you want to bring that up and tighten it up furthest away from the power unit, from the handle. So tighten it, then bring my next one up, keeping my coupler straight and tighten the nut to the coupler. And then the last one is the one closest to the handle. That way you don't get a twist in your rod when you're tightening it all up. Just like so. That makes it one solid rod now. So now we're going to attach the power unit bracket to the top of the post. Remember when we was putting the top caps in earlier, there was one of them that had 4 holes in the top that are tapped. What that does is it allows you to put the power unit like so it's on the inside of the lift so it's not sticking out further, or I can mount it on the outside like so to where it can be easy for the outside of the unit. So it's your choice. I always like it on the inside so it's no wider than the lift. And you have some bolts with a lock washer and a flat washer. Thank you. And you're only using 2 of the holes up here. And I always use the 2 holes that are the furthest away, giving me more distance between my post and the bracket, so that when your slider comes up, you got plenty of room for that to happen. And then you want to tighten that down. One thing you'll want to do is always put a little shim. There's 2 extra flat washers, and I put a shim right underneath this bracket and the top cap on both sides. Then when I tighten that down, it pulls that nice and level, just like so. Okay, now we're set there. You have 4 bolts. On the one that's going to be on this bottom hole, there's 4 big holes on the outer side of this bracket. That's the 4 you're going to use. You're going to first put on a jam nut because this bottom bolt is a little long, and so we're going to space it out. So we got a spacer, nut, washer, and then this goes in place, and then I'm putting the jam nut up. And what that's going to do is hold that in place so I can just lift the power unit up onto the studs. The rest of them, I just put the bolt, flat washer through, a nut to hold it in place, flat washer, a nut, a bolt, flat washer, and a nut. Now this makes it to where one person can easily mount this power unit. So now you have a bracket that's going to mount right up on here. And it's so much easier if you have them studs in there, so now you can just stick it in there, hold it, and put on your back nut. This is why I make this bolt a little shorter, because you have this starter capacitor that gets in the way. If you have that long one sticking in there, it will jam up against it and you won't be able to put that nut on. So by shortening it, gives you an easy way to do that. And then all you're going to do is tighten all those up, and that part is on. Now we're going to hook up our 90-degree fitting with the O-ring attachment with the jam nut. This goes right into this port on the side of your power unit. What you're going to do is put that in, turn this in till you get right up to that O-ring. You'll feel it when you get right to it. Now position this to about 7 o'clock, 7:30ish, enough to where when you put this cable on, it's not touching the power unit at this point down here. And then go ahead and snug up your jam nut on the outside. So for instance, put this on. Tighten it. Now position this to where it's just right at the corner of that power unit. And then tighten down the jam nut to the pump itself. And that's tightening that O-ring up, making a nice tight fit there to where it'll keep the oil from coming out. Now you're hooked to your hydraulic cylinder. Now next thing we're ready to do is put some oil to it. And we're about ready to get this baby to running. Okay, if you happen to have a hydraulic pump to pump your oil into the reservoir, that's really nice. Otherwise, you're going to need a funnel and a 5-gallon bucket and pour it in. This is going to take about 2.5 gallons, 2 3/4 gallons. You got these ribs right here. You're going to fill that up to the very top of those ribs, and then you'll have enough oil in there. All right, now that we've got our oil filled all the way to the top of these ribs, gets it to where the level you need to be. I've got the cables all on. We're going to now turn on the power unit. This is a 220, 20 amp breaker that you'll need to run this. Go ahead and get it started. You're going to bring the cables up good and snug to get this to raise all the way up. It's going to go all the way up and come down and bleed all the air out of the system. So the first time you get this all ready to go, you're going to raise it all the way up. You're going to bleed the cylinder when it goes up and comes all the way down. It bleeds the air out of that cylinder back into the tank. So we push the button. And as you see, the unit is going up. Now at this time, I haven't adjusted the locks, so you don't hear them clicking together yet. We'll do that in just a minute. Now as you see, 6'11" clearance when this is on the top lock gives you plenty of room to put a 4-wheel drive pickup underneath of it with your 2 hot rods up above. Really nice. So now what we're going to do is open up the lock and bring the unit down. And now you can hear the air bubbling out of the unit. First time down, we'll bleed that out so you don't have any more air problems in the system. Now, as you noticed, the hose has got a tight kink on it. So I want to readjust that so that we get that kink out. So you need your 19 wrench. Now that's all the way down, the pressure is off of it. So I can loosen this up just a little bit, just enough to turn this hose so I get that kink out of it. And then I'll retighten it back up. Now what we're going to do is adjust this so that we get it level at the heights that we need it to be. So I'm going to run it up here a little bit. These are very easy to adjust. Okay, so what we're going to do is raise this up to where this top of this bucket is even with the bottom of any one of these locks. It doesn't matter which one you want to do. But now this one is level. So now I'm going to come over to this side. Now we're to the point where we want to level off the lift to your floor that it's setting on. So what we're going to do is we're going to raise the lift up, and we're going to gauge with this top of this bucket to the bottom of one of these locks. It doesn't matter which one. So right now I've got this top of this bucket flush to the bottom of a lock. So I'm going to level all the rest of the three of them to this exact same thing. That means it's going to be level to the floor. As you go up, then the locks will all fire at the same time. So now let's look over to this side and let's see what we got. Okay, you can see here we're a good 3/4 of an inch to an inch down. So that means I need to tighten that cable nut up to bring this corner up so where it's flush. And then I'll look over here. This one is flush, it's good. And this one's down about 1/4 of an inch. So I need to raise this one 1/4 and that one about 3/4 of an inch, and then they'll all be flush. So the easiest way to do that is go ahead and let it back down onto the locks so it takes all the slack out of the cable. Then I can just get up on the lift and do it with my fingers to be able to tighten that up without having to get a wrench out. So we're going to lower it down onto the locks. Put a little slack in the cable by pushing on it as I'm holding the lever down. And now I can hop up there and do my adjusting. This one needs to come up 1/4 of an inch, so I'll raise that up 1/4. This one was 1/2 or an inch. Just like so. Now we'll try it again. Flush. Flush, flush, flush. They're all flush. That's what we want. So now as we go up, you'll hear the locks just all click in sync together. And that's when you're on a nice level floor. It's that simple to adjust it. Okay, now we're going to open the lock up. As you see now, the locks are disengaged from the post, and now we're able to come down all the way without the lock tooth engaging into the lift.